Pointillism here is a technique that was developed by Georges Seurat. It's based on his scientific juxtaposed of dots, so that's meaning putting the dots together. And it was a pure optical blend, and so it's mixing by the viewer looking at it. And so far away, you think it's all blended together, and then when you get really close, you can see this is all made of dots, just like how I did the word pointillism here. Here is an apple that is all done in pointillism, which is from the style that Georges Seurat created, which is shading with dots, and it's an optical blending. So all of this is just a whole bunch of dots that I have done with a marker. So if you have a shadow area, you're just going to put darker colors, and if it's lighter, you put less dots next to each other and you put the lighter values of that. So to get something like this, like the artist did, do not use black in it. So you're like, but that looks black. So what it actually is the opposite colors on the color wheel. So the complementary color of red is actually green. And then I used a darker version of, to make purple, you use red and blue, so I was putting purple in this to get the darker color. So this is full of purple and green, and then I also have red on top. So to zoom in here, so you can see how I have all these dots, so that's the purple and the green, and then on the leaf, I have put red on top of the green to make it that shadow area instead of brown. And then in this part, I was adding a little bit of pink, yellow, and orange to make it look like it has a highlight on this apple. So right here is the project that we are going to do. You're going to put two shoes in front of you, and don't have them as flip-flops or the slide shoes. Have them as, say, tennis shoes or boots, even cowboy boots would work, or fancy heeled boots. So you're going to put them both in front of you and put them either next to each other or on top, like what I've done here. Draw them out in your pencil form first, and then put in your shading marks and your shoestrings and everything. So here is a final sample, so you can see how it has the different values in here by adding more dots. And to show highlights, I have my middle values and just wasn't putting quite as much here. I have my really dark areas for the shadows. And you need to use at least two colors or more. So in this, I actually was using gray and black. As you can see through here is some gray, and then there's gray in here too. And then it's the more you do, the darker it's going to get. And then here is another pair of shoes or boots that I had done. And I even was adding purple in here to get a little bit darker value instead of just adding black. And then a little bit of purple in here. There's also some gray in here to help with those metal eyelets of the boots. And then in the shadow, and I'll zoom in here, you can actually see where the purple is and how I was putting them in here for the dots. So draw this all out in pencil first, erase it lightly, and you can even see in this area I did very, very fine dots with a very fine Sharpie, not the normal Sharpie, the really skinny one, to help get those stitches and everything that would be there on the boot when it was sewed in. And then this one is one I started so you could see how I had laid it all out with my pencil, and then I even labeled, like, here's the shadow, here's my shoestrings, I'd have some shading here. And this shoe was black with some pink on it, so I could do that, or I could change the whole color scheme of my shoes if I wanted. And then this was a shock where it was open, so it had some shading in there. I'm going around with the contour, but notice nothing is a straight line anywhere with my markers. It's all dots, and in the end you would be erasing everything. And here is another sample that I had made a vertical one of where I had my feet up and was looking at the shoes this way. And I was using several tones of green and a couple of different sizes of markers. So for this, I was using the super fine Sharpie, and then I was using other sizes of Sharpies when I was doing this one, so I could get the full range of the different greens. But notice I was putting more underneath the shoestring to even create the shadow there. So this is all about just using the dots like what Georges Seurat did, and then I would be erasing the pencil lines. So for when I'm putting the dots on my artwork, what I was doing was going around each one and not just doing one line, but putting many on there and then working around here. So the shadow, like I had talked about, I would just keep putting more and more dots in this area to make it darker, and I'm going to follow still that contour that I was pointing out. So for this is pink, but what I'm also going to do is grab a red and go around this part and start adding that shadow effect of where this was sticking up on my shoe. And it's just more and more dots that I would put it in, and I could even add just a few more. This way I'm starting to get the details of everything, and I'll zoom in here so you can see. So I'm just adding in through here. And then what the shoe had was, this was a black part, so I'm going to start just by lining it, and then going up underneath was just a little bit of a shadow. And I'm just going to keep putting more and more dots on it. And say when I would do the black shoestring, I could even add some gray into it to make it have a little bit more of a dimension. And then this part of the shoe where I was saying it was shading, it was black all through here. So I'm not going to do solid black on the shoe, but I would do a lot more dots like what I've been doing here on top of the shadow. So this is going to have more dots when I'm doing it because it is a darker black here than the actual black shoe. And then this was pink throughout, but the inside of my shoe is black. So I would just be putting a lot of them back and forth in this area to get the shadow area of the inside of the shoe started. For this assignment of the Pointillism shoes, you are going to use only dots, but to start with, draw everything out in pencil. So you're going to set 2 shoes in front of you and draw them out. Make sure you're drawing the details of the shoes in there, including stitching areas or where materials are changing, the shoelaces, the little eyelets, and everything. Also include a line area of where the shadows are so you know where shading needs to be later. Also on this, when we're doing everything and you're putting dots in all this for your shading, you're going to want to make sure you're making them really dark. So that's why we would be putting the marks in for the shadows. So when drawing them, make sure we see one full shoe. It could be the entire side of it and also the top of it. The second shoe that is in the picture needs to be, I need to see half of it or more. So it could be setting behind, but to where I see over half of it. They could be angled, they could be setting on top of each other, laying on top of each other. You need to be drawing this on 12 by 18 piece of paper, so the shoes need to be at least 10 inches or larger, filling up the piece of paper. And then it is time to start with the dots. So you could use permanent markers, or you could use regular water-based markers like Crayola, or a combination of them. And then you're going to just keep layering them in with dots. And more and more and more. So the more color, the better it's going to look, and make sure you're using shading. Even though Georges Seurat did not use black, you are allowed to use black, and make sure you have at least 2 or more colors. So if you have a black shoe but you would want to make it red, that is fine. The color of the shoe does not have to stay the same color as the original shoe that you're looking at. Also, make sure when you're doing this, like we shaded with our pencil where we have highlights and shadows, you will also be doing this with your markers. So make sure the range of the shoes has the full value range. And then at the end, make sure you erase all pencil lines, because I should not see any lines at all. There are no lines with your markers and no lines with your pencils. It's all dots. And this should be taking 2 class periods, which is 90 minutes each. The technique that we are doing is called Pointillism, and it was created by Georges Seurat. And a little way to remember it is Georges Seurat did dot to dot. So Pointillism is the whole point of this lesson. And thank you for watching.